All right. Hey, Marcus. What's up?
Hi. Not much.
All right. So last time we listened to the Mike Pence quote again. We won't do it this time. We'll skip it. And we looked at two videos or a video of Bill Barr, the Attorney General, and his testimony about his conversations with Donald Trump about what he knew, that he knew the allegations didn't have any weight. There was no evidence of fraud that would have overturned the election. Trump was angry and had no interest in the truth, actually figuring out what happened.
Mhm.
And so that's a pattern that repeated itself over and over and over. And this is on the left side what was told to Trump. These are people under oath, their testimony about what they told him. And then on the right is what Trump said publicly in tweets or in videos or whatever press conferences, whatever public way he was communicating. He said these things. So let's just review them. All right, we'll just go right down the list. Sound good?
Yeah.
You're gonna do Trump. I'm gonna do the other people.
All right.
Ready? Can you see it? All right. So this is then Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen, December 15th. He said, "Well, what about this? I saw it on the videotape. Somebody delivering a suitcase of ballots, and we said it wasn't a suitcase. It was a bin. That's what they use when they're counting ballots. It's benign."
There's even security camera footage from Georgia that shows officials telling poll watchers to leave the room before pulling suitcases of ballots out from under the tables and continuing to count for hours.
So he's publicly sharing the allegation he had already been told was false. The next
Yeah.
one, this is December 27th and 31st. Acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue, I told the president myself that several times in several conversations that these allegations about ballots being smuggled in a suitcase and run through the machine several times, it was not true. That we looked at it. We looked at the video, we interviewed the witnesses, that it was not true. I believe it was in the phone call on December 27th. It was also in a meeting in the Oval Office on December 31st.
She stuffed the machine. She stuffed the ballot. Each ballot went 3 times. They were showing. Here's ballot number one. Here's a second ballot time. Third time. Next ballot.
So he's repeating the same thing just a couple of days later after he was told with evidence. They interviewed witnesses. All right, this is Brad Raffensperger, Secretary of State of Georgia. You're talking about State Farm video, and I think it's extremely unfortunate that Rudy Giuliani or his people, they sliced and diced that video and took it out of context. We did an audit of that, and we proved conclusively that they were not scanned 3 times. Yes, Mr. President, we'll send you the link from WSB. Trump said, I don't care about a link. I don't need it. That was January 2nd.
I spoke to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger yesterday about Fulton County and voter fraud in Georgia. He was unwilling or unable to answer questions such as the ballots under the table scam, ballot destruction, out of state voters, dead voters, and more. He has no clue.
All right. So he actually said we proved conclusively just against what Trump wanted it to say. All right. General Barr, this is Attorney General Bill Barr. Then he raised the big vote dump, as he called it, in Detroit. He said people saw boxes coming into the counting station at all hours of the morning and so forth. I said, Mr. President, there are 630 precincts in Detroit, and unlike elsewhere in the state, they centralized the counting process, so they're not counted in each precinct. They're moved to counting stations, and so the normal process would involve boxes coming in at all different hours. And I said, did anyone point out to you, did all the people complaining about it point out to you, you actually did better in Detroit than you did last time? I mean, there's no indication of fraud in Detroit.
I'll tell you what, it's wrong. Voter fraud. Here's an example. This is Michigan at 6:31 in the morning. A vote dump of 149 772 votes came in unexpectedly. We were winning by a lot. That batch was received in horror. In Detroit, everybody saw the tremendous conflict. There were more votes than there were more voters.
More votes than voters. Not
Yeah.
true. All right. Acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue. The president then continued, there are more votes than voters, but I was aware of that allegation. And I said, that was just a matter of them comparing to 2020 votes cast to 2016 registration numbers. That is not a valid complaint.
More votes than they had voters, and many other states also.
All right, the same acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue, we would say to him, we checked that out and there's nothing to it. And we would cite to certain allegations. And so, like, such as Pennsylvania, right? No, there were not 250,000 more votes reported that were actually cast. That's not true. So we would say things like that.
In Pennsylvania, you had 205,000 more votes than you had voters, and the number is actually much greater than that now. That was as of a week ago, and this is a mathematical impossibility unless you want to say it is a total fraud.
All right, Brad Raffensperger again. And this is what Trump said. It's 4,502 who voted, but they weren't on the voter registration roll, which they had to be. You had 18,325 vacant address voters. The address was vacant and they're not allowed to be counted. That's 18,325. Raffensperger says, well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong.
4,502 illegal ballots were cast by individuals who do not appear on the state voters' rolls. Well, that's sort of strange. 18,325 illegal ballots were cast by individuals who registered to vote using an address listed as vacant according to the Postal Service.
So after he had already been told those numbers are wrong, then it's the dead people one. So dead people voted, and I think that number is close to 5,000 people. And they went to obituaries. They went to all sorts of methods to come up with an accurate number. And the minimum is close to about 5,000 voters. Raffensperger says the actual number were two people that were dead that voted. So that's wrong.
The number of fraudulent ballots that we identified across the state is staggering. Over 10,300 ballots in Georgia were cast by individuals whose names and dates of birth match Georgia's residents who died in 2020 and prior to the election.
All right. So even after he's told the data is wrong, he keeps saying it. Georgia Secretary of State General Counsel Ryan Germany, Trump says this. You had out-of-state voters, they voted in Georgia, but they were from out of state of 4,925. And then Germany says, everyone we've been through are people that lived in Georgia, moved to a different state, but then moved back to Georgia legitimately. They moved back in years ago. This was not like something just before the election. So there's something about that data that is just not accurate.
And at least 15,000 ballots were cast by individuals who moved out of the state prior to November 3rd election. They say they moved right back.
And that was 4 days after that conversation. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, not sure you say that. The one specific I remember referencing was I don't agree with the Dominion track. I specifically referenced waving him off the Dominion theory earlier in my testimony. Are you saying you think he still continued to tweet that after you waved him off of it? Yeah.
Between mid-November and January 5th, 2021, President Trump tweeted or retweeted conspiracy theories about Dominion nearly 36 times.
The international allegations, this is Trump campaign senior advisor Jason Miller, the international allegations for Dominion were not valid. And then the question, okay, did anybody communicate that to the president? And his answer, I know that was communicated. I know I communicated it.
You have Dominion, which is very, very suspect to start off with. Nobody knows the ownership. People say the votes are counted in foreign countries and much worse.
Right. And it goes on and on and on. I think we've read enough of these. I'll put a link to all these. These are all from the report by the January 6th committee. But Attorney General Barr tells him this on the 23rd of November. On the 26th, Trump says it publicly, even though he knows it's false. Attorney General Barr on December 1st tells him this. The next day, Trump is saying the same allegations he knows are false. It just keeps going On and on and on. You get the point. Anything stick out to you, Marcus?
Nothing that hasn't been already said, I would say. No.
So he knew, he continued to lie. He asked those around him to privilege himself in his victory over the Constitution, rule of law, and mislead millions of his followers. All of this leading up to January 6th, and that tweet at the beginning just said, be there, it's going to be wild. And they came.
Yeah,
And it was
wild.
it was wild.
That was one thing Trump didn't lie about.
The one thing he said was true.
Yeah.
It was wild. All right. Next time.
Yeah.
Peace
See
out.
you in the next one.